marketing and customer experience is like this.
Definitely.
Not only for the journey piece, you have the buyer journey and then you have the customer journey. And I know that more CMOs, I'm reading that to stay at the table, they really have to be the growth architect.
And they just sent him a brand new Kindle out of the box, no strings attached. You didn't have to pay a dime for shipping or for shipping back the broken Kindle or anything. And I remember I met him a few days after and he was like, this is the single best experience that I've had with electronics.
Yeah, Fractionals, great days are ahead of it. Just take a look at the global marketplace. I can't get on LinkedIn without seeing somebody having an issue with the job market.
That's true.
Or we call them layoffs in the US, redundancies in the UK. That's just a reality right now.
Welcome to OFRAC, the podcast where top fractional leaders share their wins, struggles, and stories from the trenches. Hosted by Adir Ron.
Welcome to OFRAC, the podcast where we dive into the world of fractional leadership, the wins, the struggles, and everything in between. I'm your host, Adir Ron, Fractional CMO. And my guest today is Sue Duris. Hi, Sue.
Hi.
Great to have you here today.
Well, thank you for having me on your show. I'm looking forward to it.
Same here. So let me do a quick introduction. So Sue is the Silicon Valley CMO who reinvented herself as a fractional CX powerhouse. She's customer-centric playbooks have spiked revenue by 50% and users by 4x for a data acceleration startup, and even helped steer an enterprise CX platform to a 20 million Cisco exit. I'd love to hear that story. Sue is also a certified CX pro and a global awards judge, and she's on a mission to prove that listening harder is the surest shortcut to growth. So, Sue, let's kick this off with a little icebreaker question.
Sounds great.
So you've judged CX awards around the globe. What was the craziest submission that you've seen? The one that made you say, "Oh, no way, that's real"?
I don't think I've had one of those, but some of the brands that I've had that I've judged for, I haven't known about. And there was one brand, I haven't been there yet. It's a shopping village in the UK and pretty impressive. And I'm a shopaholic. Let's face it, I'm a pretty transparent person. And that one, it was interesting for me because I just didn't know that was there. That was actually happening. I've been a US expat in the UK now for 7 years, and I think I've seen quite a bit in the UK, but that particular thing, that was off my radar, and that really surprises me. But it was delightful to read it and really read that they got customer experience, and making shopping village an entire experience was very impressive to me.
Did you end up visiting after the award?
No. It's on my bucket
not yet.
list. I will
Okay.
get to it at some point. There's always next month.
That is true. There's always next month. Okay, so let's dive in and let's go into the next section, which is called "How the Frack Did You Get Here?" So, Sue?
Well, I always like Steve Jobs' quote, and it's you can only connect the dots looking backwards. You can't connect them looking forwards. And I remember,
I love that quote.
I know he has some great quotes. Fully transparent, he was a neighbor of mine when I was in Silicon
Really?
Valley. R.I.P. Steve Jobs. He's sorely missed. But what had happened is I was working for .com. I call myself a survivor of the dot-com bubble burst. And I started contracting, doing freelance work. And if there wasn't work for me, I connected people. And they remembered that, and they would ask me to do, started with marketing, then turned into content strategy and customer experience strategy and building programs, customer experience programs. And then at some point I said, I'm doing all this. Why don't I just go ahead and make it official, start a business? And that's how I started. And with me, I'm very much word of mouth and content, creating content, networking, speaking at events, things of that nature, because I specifically look for those brands or organizations who are customer centric and want to be better at it, or who want to become customer centric and they want to learn. So those organizations that have that growth mindset and realize they're the ones that have growth as their North Star typically, and they're looking to grow. And what competitive advantage do I have? And what is my product market fit that are luring enough for quickly converting my traffic to customers who stay, who become advocates of me. So that's what I tend to look at, and how I drive myself, how I drive my business.
Interesting. Do you see that? Is there a specific mindset that you're looking for? Or maybe a better way to ask this is, do you see that the organizations that are customer centric, that do have CX top of mind, can you perhaps identify a common thread between how those founders think or how they act compared to, for example, other businesses where CX is not top of mind? And I've seen a fair share of those as well, unfortunately.
Well, I'll use the startup space as an example,
Sure.
and it's and if fractionals aren't looking at the startup space, they probably should, because to me, I think it's an easy entry. It's a win-win for both the fractional as well as the organization. Typically, I will put out either a piece of content, or what was quoted, somebody asks me to be a guest, and one thing leads to another, They start asking questions. They really want to lead with that customer experience foot. Or if they're not customer experience yet, their buyer journey ready. And that's all about, how do I drive awareness? What is my, how do I get quick value add so my customers that I'm targeting gets me? And that's really at the buyer journey. How are you driving awareness? How are you building, what is your call to action when you drive awareness? Are you thinking ahead, and you understand their pain, so that they're giving you as the brand are giving them things to consider, so that you're constantly have that call to action, so you're getting to that conversion. When they're thinking that way, and not, what do I have to do to get an investor? How do I get an investor meeting? That comes later. It should be, how do I look at my customer strategy? What's my ICP?
Exactly.
Ideal customer profile, for people who not sure what ICP is. Just thinking along those lines. Who is that target? Who is that target customer? What do I have to show them that I hear you. I want to help you solve your pain and doing things like that. It's like having the growth top of mind all along,
Yeah.
because doing that, not only it's like a double win-win for them. You're winning customers, and because the investors, trust me, I have created pitch decks and I've made the pitches, and I have a lot of
Okay.
VCs. I chat with a lot of VCs that they're looking at. They want to see, if I invest in somebody, how quick am I going to have that return? And I
Right.
also have a pool of people who I'm looking to create investment opportunities for as well. So if you're doing these things, thinking outside the box, thinking at that, what that North Star is, then all these things come.
Exactly. And I think you made a really important point. I think it's about knowing who your customer is and then caring for your customer before you care for others, before you care for business growth, before you care for investors. I think that, you know, a lot of founders kind of have, in my perspective, and I think you'd agree, kind of have their priorities upside down. They're thinking like, okay, first of all, I need to serve my shareholders. I need to make sure the business grows. I need to hit this 15, 20, 50, 100% year over year growth milestone that my board of directors defined that I have to reach. And then they're constantly thinking about, would be interesting to see how they handle it from a CX perspective, if they're going to say something about it other than this oops server error message that we just got. Anyway, trying to kind of get back on the horse, we were talking about that important perspective of a founder, that you should always prioritize the customers before you prioritize anything else. And I think that's kind of what you're advocating for.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned care, because in the CX world, our two, I wouldn't call them rules, but the two things that we always start with. Number one is empathy, putting yourself in your client's shoes. And second, be curious enough to go beyond the empathy. What's keeping them up at night? Oh, that's interesting what you said. Maybe we can explore that together and co-create a solution type thing. So that's why I always think that, well, you're a marketing guy, you would definitely appreciate this. I think marketing and customer experience is like this, not
Definitely.
only for the journey piece. You have the buyer journey, and then you have the customer journey. And I know that more CMOs, I'm reading that to stay at the table, they really have to be the growth architect of organizations.
Exactly.
And with us as fractionals, sometimes we have to lead that charge and be the advisor to help. There might be a CMO there might be a CEO who's wearing multiple hats, or even the marketing team to, okay, we're doing marketing, but we have a bigger goal that we're looking at, and that's to be better, and that's to grow our customers so that we can grow as an organization.
Exactly. And yeah, I think you mentioned, from a fractional perspective, I think that's an interesting take that I'd love to hear your thoughts on. How do you see, you're coming in as a fractional CX and leader, and you're coming in and you're advocating exactly for this. Listen to the customer, care about the customer, understand the customer, know what keeps them up at night, prioritize this. What's the feedback that you're getting, or pushback that you're getting, maybe from other C-level leaders in organizations that you work with? Are they fully aligned? Are they happy to hop on board and collaborate, or are they pushing back and saying like, hey, no, we need to prioritize revenue, or we need to prioritize something else?
It's interesting, and it really depends on the CEO. You hear about customer experience is top down. You have to have the CEO or somebody in the C-suite, and preferably everybody in the C-suite. I believe customer experience is top down and bottom up.
Okay.
If you can get the line people to understand product, customer support, marketing, I totally understand that. Yeah, we have to change things. We have to change this call to action. We have to change our product because we're hearing our customers either through what feedback, whatever method of feedback you're hearing that from, that they're getting it as a fractional. That is, for me, their aha moment is a great aha moment for me.
Yeah.
The light bulb went on. They get it, and you know it's kind of grassroots in the startup world, and even small. Someone who's not a enterprise. It takes that one thought, adding another thought, adding another thought. That's why when you hear about diversity and inclusion, it's not all about unrepresented or underrepresented groups. It's about diversity of thought.
Exactly.
Enabling different perspectives, different viewpoints, because that's how we grow.
Exactly. I think that. You hit the nail right on its head, and I love that thought. I love that sentence. It's not just, it's the diversity of thought. I think that's key here. I think that opening up the organization to more opinions, opening up the leadership to different perspectives, different opinions, different, even people coming from different emotional backgrounds and different things that they care about, that what brings in a good balance that can steer kind of like the organization in a right direction.
But on that note, I don't want to say that everything's rosy. I've had situations where I really had to influence. And even then, I remember a particular product person was very upset about customer experience because, historically, engineering-led organizations merged into product-led organizations. But we have to be careful with the product-led piece because there are so many products out there that we could get product saturation. What is a differentiator? How they experience a product. I'm an EE subscriber. Somebody who might be Vodafone, we're basically getting the same product.
Yeah.
But EE gives me a great experience, and Vodafone may or may not dependent. It comes down to how the person feels. Do they feel good interacting with the brand? Are they getting, it's not all about the product or service. It's the feeling. Is it easy to interact with the brand if I have an issue or I might want to purchase something else?
Exactly. I remember, wow, I think that was like 10 years ago, maybe more even. I had a good friend who just purchased a Kindle off of Amazon. And then a couple of months in, I think he had a Kindle for more than a year. Like that 1 year period of coverage was over. And then, life happens. He dropped the Kindle and the screen broke. And he wrote to Amazon support and he was like, he was basically expecting nothing. He was living outside of Amazon's coverage as well. He bought it when he was in the US and then he went living somewhere else. And then he was shocked. He talked to a support agent for 2 minutes and they were like, "Oh, we're really sorry to hear that your Kindle broke. What's your address? And we're going to send you a new one and we're going to send you a bag to put your broken Kindle in, and then we're going to refurbish it and hopefully be able to sell it again." And they just sent him a brand new Kindle out of the box, no strings attached.
Wow.
You didn't have to pay a dime for shipping or for shipping back the broken Kindle or anything. And I remember I met him a few days after and he was like, this is the single best experience that I've had with an electronics brand in a way. If you think about it, Amazon is also an electronics brand, and with Kindle, it's like there is 1,000,000% chance that the next time I need to buy something, I will buy it there above any other platform, even if it's going to cost me $10, $20, $50 more. And it's all about the
And
experience.
Amazon's a great leader, a great CX leader for just that story alone, that it's all about the experience.
Exactly.
Because they want people to come back. They want people to word of mouth. Hey, I had this great experience with Amazon. You should really consider them.
Exactly.
That is the best acquisition method, and it's the cheapest.
Exactly.
To get people in. That's why loyalty and advocacy is so important.
Exactly. But let's segue that into something that's a bit different. We talked about some great CX experiences. Now I want to ask you maybe about a bad CX experience, or not necessarily a CX experience, but your experience. So I call this next section your Frac'd Up Moment. So maybe something from your career or history that was a bit of a horror story that you're willing to share with us today.
Yes, I happen to remember one that it was near the early days of M4 communications, and I had seen this opportunity on LinkedIn. They were looking for, I mean, back then we weren't called fractional is a fairly new term, but was looking for a CMO to help. So he was a foreigner. He had this online storage, cloud storage product that he wanted to get into the US. The timing wasn't great because back then, this is about 2011, you had Box, you had Dropbox, you had Apple, you had Microsoft, everybody was doing online storage.
Right.
And for the most part, it was a free play. It was a freemium. And he wanted to do freemium as well as premium, which a lot of SaaS type cloud companies, cloud-based companies want to do. But he thought his product was so great that he did get, we were able to get into, and now I can't remember who it was, the startup news place. I cannot think of it right now. We were able to get in there, so we had some momentum. But he said, well, because I have all this momentum, I want to get to the Wall Street Journal, I want to get into New York Times, Forbes, Fortune, yada, yada, yada. The list goes down. And I said, well, we need to position ourselves. I mean, and we need to have that product market fit and differentiate from Dropbox and Box and all these companies. He wasn't listening. All he wanted to do was get in these mainstream media places, and was able to do some things like on San Jose Mercury News, Fortune, which calmed him down a little bit, but it was very much maybe not understanding the market. And you as a fractional, this is where we can only do so much. And I think one of the things that I really focus on is seeking first to understand versus being understood. That's one of Stephen Covey's 7 habits for highly effective people. And I think a lot of times fractionals, consultants, whatever the case may be, we are so geared to driving change, creating some type of impact to prove our value, that we forget that it's an easier path if we understand, if we listen to the client, the prospective client, on what their pain is and what they're talking about in their voice, and communicate in their voice, it's an easier path to be understood. This particular individual, and I think I can say that perhaps stepping back and explaining things a little bit and understanding things from his perspective would have been a little bit, it would have been smoother, but I think he was always going to be, hey, I can compete with Dropbox. The problem was Dropbox was in the marketplace, the US marketplace, 5 years before his company. Yeah. So there were things, there was catch-up time, and that's the time to really hone in on who are the ideal customers, who are those targets, what kind of content can we create, what is the product market fit, looking at those things to be able to drive change, to be able to create impact.
Okay, interesting. Thank you for sharing. And yeah, it's you really need to be in the right mindset. I agree. So let's change gears a bit and kind of shift to something that's a bit different, and let's move over to our quickfire round. So I'm going to ask you a few quick questions. Answer with whatever comes to mind. So we'll start off with frac or fiction. And I'm going to take a quote that I saw recently. I'd love to hear your opinion on it. And it's a bit controversial, so I'm smiling already.
I like the frac or fiction. I think that.
I tried to make everything tie in with frac because I'm a silly guy and I like plays on words. So so I worked really hard on that. So thank you. So I saw a discussion a while ago on the importance of CX and customer success and customer experience, and is there any difference between them, and what does it even mean? Someone said CX is just shiny NPS surveys. Frac or fiction?
Oh, definitely fiction. Definitely fiction.
Okay, I thought so. Would you like to add something to that?
I'd like to add a lot to that, but I don't know if we have a lot of time. That would be its own thing. Customer experience is really a movement, and it's all about understanding thoughts and feelings of customers, of would-be customers, seeking first to understand, getting that customer understanding, and having the tools in your office to be able to take that customer voice. They said, let's use the NPS survey, because a lot of organizations use NPS as their foundational metric on which to build other things.
Right. To measure NPS product market fit.
Exactly. Product market fit, satisfaction, how things, because it's all about, would you recommend? So getting, would people recommend? But the problem with using NPS is, or any other metric, you have to be careful because you can easily game the system and you can skew numbers. And then you're concerned about, okay, well, my NPS score is this, but according to my NPS score, my revenue should be up. That's why it's important to take a holistic view of the customer. And that's by behaviors. That's by listening to your employees who are listening to customers and really understanding that voice. But you need the ecosystem, the infrastructure in the organization to be able to take that piece of feedback and make it a reality. And that is improving a process somewhere down the line. So I've heard it before. Customer experience is the umbrella. And you have customer support, you have customer success, you have contact centers, things of that nature, but is much more than an NPS score.
I couldn't agree more. Okay, next question. What is the one tool in your toolbox or toolkit that you swear by? The one thing you can't do without?
It's really communicating. I hate to go back to the seek first to understand, but it's so key. That that's the foundation that a fractional should be focused on. Because if you understand, you give them the opportunity to explain to you, this is what's keeping me up at night, and really understand and listen to the words that they're using so that you can communicate in the language that they're using. Because when you can do that, that's how you build trust. And when you start building trust, you start building influence. And when you start building influence, they're going to listen, and you're going to build a tidal wave of people listening. And when they start listening, then that's how you can affect change.
I love it.
And create impact.
Fantastic answer. Thank you. What is your definition of a dream client versus a nightmare client?
First, I'm going to lead off with something.
Okay.
On the nightmare client, that as fractionals, and it took me a while to, when you're just starting out on your fractional journey, you may be so concerned, I don't want to lose a client. It's revenue. I don't know where the next revenue is going to come, and I have to build this client so that I have to keep this client so that I'll get more. We should never be in a situation keeping clients out of desperation. Sometimes the fit isn't right.
Exactly.
Because if we do, we're chasing. We get in that chase mode. They want something, we have to chase. And all the things that we do well, the reason that person has come to us goes out the window, and we lose things. So it's really keeping stamina, being true to your values, and if it's not the right fit, it's not the right fit, and move on. Everything, at the end of the day, everything will be fine. So my dream client is someone who has a growth mindset, who wants to learn, who wants to that diversity of thought. They may not be, for me, they may not be customer-centric yet, but they're open enough to tell me how being customer-centric is really going to help me and my organization. Listening and championing customer centricity, because when you're the CEO, the buck stops with you, people listen to you, and all those different things. It doesn't mean that I just have to sell to the CEO. Because a CTO, the tech person, and the CFO and the CMO those are three different priorities. They have, three different agendas that you have to balance somehow.
And align with all three or more.
Exactly. And get them on board, because customer experience is all about rowing in the same direction. You have to align. Otherwise, if there's no alignment, silos form, and that's when things get really not pretty for existing customers and new customers. Right. So those are my two versions, and let's face it, a lot of times we're kind of in the middle there. I would say the bookends are outliers, and you're getting somewhere in the middle there, where they're not always going to listen to you, but if you listen to them and they get, it's not just, it's lip service. They really see you getting there and you're being authentic. Being genuine is, people can tell it a mile a minute. So if you can, as a fractional, just be genuine, understand what they're going through and what their needs are, that's going to help you find what the solutions are. If that's you recommending, advising on the solutions, strategy and tactical, maybe it's co-creation.
Okay. Next question. Where do you see the future of fractional?
I think fractionals great days are ahead of it.
Okay.
Just take a look at the global marketplace. I can't get on LinkedIn without seeing somebody having an issue with the job market.
That's true.
Or we call them layoffs in the US, redundancies in the UK. That's just a reality right now. But what it's doing, it's opening the door for people to become fractionals. They have a particular skill that's valuable in the marketplace, and to actually take that journey. Now, I will also be honest that, and I'm pretty sure that you can attest to this, it's not always easy. And you want to have your own strategy. You're helping people with their strategy, but as a fractional, have your own strategy. What is your ideal customer profile? What is the unmet or undermet need you're filling? And having these things in your toolbox is going to make it so much easier for you to connect with those clients down the road.
That's a great answer. And I love you said that the bright future is still ahead of us. I tend to think so myself as well. Okay, so we're getting closer to the end of our conversation, and I do have one final question before we finish today. So, if you could give one piece of advice to someone who's thinking about going fractional, someone who's still in their kind of full-time employment and they're aspiring or thinking about going fractional, what would that one piece of advice be?
I would say learn as much as you can about being fractional, what you can expect, because especially I know just as many people that may be going fractional because they were laid off as they have jobs and they want to have a better work-life balance. They don't want to be an internal employee anymore. Do the groundwork. Create a SWOT analysis. Your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. That'll give you kind of a picture of where you could possibly fit in, where there might be gaps, and those gaps could be areas of learning. Reach out to fractionals, reach out to organizations that might work in that fractional space. There is now a fractional conference. I don't know if you're going to that.
I think I heard about it. It's US based though, right? I think it's even West Coast, which is a bit far from the Netherlands. But I'm thinking about it.
But I would say LinkedIn is your friend. Do the research, connect with people, look at even, let's say you're a great HR person who wants to become fractional and be an HR, work in the HR space. Okay, so what markets are you going to focus? Which businesses, size of businesses within those markets? What services are you going to offer? And the more focused and specialized you can get, the more you're going to get those customers and clients, and you're going to craft a niche out for yourself and actually build that competitive advantage.
Okay, I think that's a great piece of advice, and I definitely concur with that. Okay, so that brings us to the end of this episode. So Sue, thank you for joining me today, and for a really interesting and eye-opening conversation on the importance of CX. And I think I'm a guy who very much believes that CX and marketing works hand in hand, and even I learned a few important things today. So thank you.
Well, thank you for your wonderful podcast and inviting me. I very much appreciate the opportunity to talk about fractionals, marketing, and customer experience. You don't have to twist my arm. They're my favorite topics.
Perfect. So for our listeners, or if you're watching us on YouTube, I hope you enjoyed our conversation today. If you did, please like, subscribe, follow, comment, share, do all those wonderful things. Sue Duris, thank you very much for being with me today, and we'll see you all next time.
Thank you.